This is insane. Yes, Canada and the United States of America renewed their historic hockey rivalry last night at the Bell Center in a game that pretty much had it all in terms of scoring and fighting and everything in between. But all that and more today on Oilers Digest as we recap that one and also provide you some quotes from Connor McDavid after the game. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you do so. If you're part of the 80% that haven't subscribed to the channel, folks, hit that subscribe button down below for any and all Oilers content. But if you have subscribed to the channel, I'd like to thank each and every one of you on the road to 3,000. Now, like you probably saw last night, and you saw it in the intro, folks. What a hockey game that was, with Saturday nights all right for fighting. Yes, last night the Bell Center crowd was roaring from start to finish, and they were even more so during the start of the game. In the opening 9 seconds, 3 separate fights. Yes, both Kachuk brothers there facing off with Brandon Hagel and Sam Bennett, and then there was a scrum after that. We thought it was all said and done, and then Colton Parayko, 6'7" Colton Parayko, taking on one of the smallest members of the American team with J.T. Miller, and of course that got the crowd riled up, but it didn't energize the Canadian team for the entire game as they dropped it 3-1, but Connor McDavid said we wanted to get off to a good start and get the fans into it. Pretty proud of all three of those guys stepping up and doing that, but of course, like I said, the Americans taking this one 3-1 in a very tightly contested game from start to finish. Of course, Connor McDavid, our own Connor McDavid here on Oilers Digest from Drew Doughty, and a secondary assist from Jordan Binnington there, making it 1-0 Canada. I think that's the most pumped up I've ever seen Connor McDavid before, of course, on the highest stage there is with international hockey. Maybe, the Olympics too, can't disrespect the Olympics, but Connor McDavid finally getting a chance to represent his country best on best, and you could see it in his goal celebration, but that didn't last long until Jake Gensel beats Jordan Binnington clean on the 5-hole following a Connor McDavid check from Charlie McAvoy there, of course, the Team USA defense core targeting McDavid all night long and trying to get under his skin. Of course, this is big boy hockey, and that is big boy hockey things. Of course, Connor McDavid not rattled, but Dylan Larkin off of an awful turnover from Sidney Crosby. Can't believe I'm saying those words. And a bit of a mistimed line change from Thomas Harley. Dylan Larkin beats Jordan Binnington clean on a 2-on-1, and then Jake Gensel adds the empty netter, making 3-1 USA, and they get a bye into the final of the Four Nations face-off without having even played their third game yet against Team Sweden. But Team Canada, shots on goal 26-23, but it was one of the more easier nights for Connor Hellebuyck in the American crease. Hits 34-29, of course, big boy hockey, 30-28 in favor of the faceoffs. There were no penalties called after the first period, so the Americans going 0-for-1 on their power play, and Team Canada going 0-for-2. So, of course, the lethal power play not managing to do anything last night, but, of course, the American defense core and their forwards, nonetheless, the whole system, regardless, just swallowing the Canadians last night, really making it tough for them to do anything whatsoever. And of course, block shots 2016, so John Cooper really prioritizing, the defensive part of the team system. Of course, in a short tournament like this, you have to get them to gel together, but on the deserve to win meter, Money Puck really favored Team Canada 74-26 as Canada dominated the offensive zone time with 26 minutes compared to the Americans 19 minutes in the Team Canada zone. But of course, after the second period with the Team USA lead, they pretty much tried to sit back on it, and they were successful in doing so. But the real problem last night is just the Canadian forwards not managing to really do anything whatsoever. Of course, you saw there the Hagel points rally line, John Cooper loving to go with that pretty much every second shift, but the Reinhart, McDavid, and Marner line still struggling to get any form of chemistry there, which is strange considering McDavid and Reinhart do have the history of playing together, in minor hockey. But Mitch Marner, other than his, Team Sweden overtime goal, little bit of a ghost out there, but, that line just swallowed by the Americans last night, only on for 3 shot attempts, but, on ice shot attempts against on for 11, so you got to find a way to get Connor McDavid some help on that line. Of course, they left the guy that's most familiar with him at home with Zach Hyman, but that's neither here or there. You got to find a way to switch things up. Maybe finally put the nuclear line of, McKinnon, McDavid, and Crosby together. They were only on the ice together for, I believe it was 1 minute and 31 seconds. You might have to check that, but you need to find a way to get, Connor McDavid some actual help on Team Canada. With best on best, that's sort of a crazy thing to say, but he's trying to do his best out there. And the two wingers that they gave him, not so much. But with the defensive side, I didn't have a problem with Harley and Doughty or Taze and Sam. I mean, the only problem I had with Thomas Harley was, of course, the change that led to the Dylan Larkin goal with the 2-on-1. But Morrissey Parayko, I mean, no idea how Colton Parayko made this Team Canada team. On ice for 18 shots against, but only on ice for 7-4. Of course, Josh Morrissey, he's the new power play QB ever since Cale Makar was not in the lineup last night. Of course, he was a game time decision, and he was unable to go. So, of course, Thomas Harley brought up, had a fantastic game, but Parayko, you have a guy with like Evan Bouchard who can desperately move up the puck whenever he can up the ice, and that's something that the Team Canada defensive core, desperately needed. They needed someone to move the puck up the ice. You pretty much have Drew Doughty, and that's it. But when you suggest taking your best, and Evan Bouchard is a part of your best, and you don't take him, it kind of shows the flaws in your game. But am I biased? Maybe, absolutely, sure. But Evan Bouchard is something this team needed, alongside with Zach Hyman. But just taking a look at the individual stats here, of course, I highlighted the Marner, Reinhardt, and McDavid line. Of course, Corsi for and Corsi against. All the underlying statistics. Not a whole lot of positivity there, but I mean, there is some positivity. Of course, like I said, with the Drew Doughty and Thomas Harley pairing last night. Not to mention Brandon Hagel, the best non-McDavid forward on the ice last night. But it doesn't really matter, what the deserve to win meter says. But of course, Team Canada last two games analytically not their hottest moment whatsoever. But I mean, they still have one, maybe two more games left in the tournament to sort of really get something together get something clicking. And then of course, when it comes to the 5-on-5, more analytics here, of course, very 50-50 like we saw in the Sweden-Finland game yesterday. But the real difference maker was Canada not capitalizing on their scoring chances for and their high danger chances for. Of course, leading that one 12-5 over the Americans. Of course, there were too many times where Team Canada had a golden opportunity and they just made one more unnecessary pass. We saw it with the McDavid 2-on-1 there. I do believe it was a 1-on-1, and he just tried to force a pass, and it's like, you're Connor McDavid. You just scored 64 goals 2 years ago. You know how to shoot, put the puck on net with Connor Hellebuyck. You're not going to beat him by being cute, and that's especially what Chris Pronger thought on Twitter last night. Of course, Chris Pronger, no stranger to the international game. Of course, multiple Olympic games under his belt. And he said, Canada, way too cute, traffic and get pucks to the net. Of course, most Oilers fans do hate Chris Pronger, but you know what? Sometimes the worst person makes a really good point. With Chris Pronger, that is a very, very good point. Of course, when a game gets that tight, the difference is goaltending, and unfortunately, goaltending was the difference last night with Connor Hellebuyck with a 2.79 goals saved above expected. When, I didn't think his night was that difficult, but of course, Money Puck thought differently with 2.79. And then the other side, the St. Louis Blues in Jordan Binnington with a, a minus 0.54 goals saved above expected. Of course, he had some good saves there in the third to keep Canada in it, but the 2 goals against were just very weak. Of course, the Jake Gensel shot off the rush there. Any goalie would really have that, unless you're Stuart Skinner or the Dylan Larkin 2-on-1. Sure, you could have challenged the shooter a little bit, because I think that 2-on-1 was played perfectly there. But when it comes to Team Canada, I mean, Connor McDavid, he's not worried. I'm pretty sure he relished in the fact that it was the first time I got to play the Americans in best on best. He said, really high quality, obviously. As I said the other night, there's a lot of great players out there. It was fast again, tight checking, competitive, emotional. It had everything that you would want in a hockey game, I thought. It sucks that it didn't go our way, but this thing's far from over. And far from over indeed, as Canada still has one more round-robin game before a potential final game, with Maple Magic still alive. Yes, with Team Canada, they still have the game against the Finns tomorrow afternoon, which we will have a recap for at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and then followed by the Sweden and U.S. game in Boston. Of course, lots of scenarios here. If Canada wins in regulation or overtime, and if the Americans beat Sweden, Canada would get into that second place spot and face the Americans in the final. Of course, it would take a Canada winning in overtime and Sweden beating the Americans in regulation. Of course, the Americans might sit some players. Of course, Matthew Tkachuk missed the third period last night, so he might take tomorrow off to rest up there. But it should be a very easy American win. So Canada, any win in in any fashion would pretty much get them into the second place spot. But if Finland wins in overtime or regulation there, Canada would drop to either second or third or fourth there. Hopefully they're in second, but they would drop to either third or fourth there. But it should be very interesting because, of course, you can't look past Finland. Of course, they don't really have the deep herrings to compare with the other three countries, but it's still Finland. They've always been a pesky country in international play. But if Canada does get past the Finns and face off in the Americans, we can be reminded of what happened 15 years ago in Vancouver in 2010. Of course, the Americans took the preliminary round game 5-3, beating Team Canada in a shocker. But a week later, Sidney Crosby in the golden goal, Canada took that one 3-2 in overtime. So hopefully we can get sort of, a deja vu of that. But Canada still has lots of work to do before a potential rematch on Thursday night. That is it for today's video. Let me know what you thought in the comments about last night's game. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know. Make sure you subscribe to the channel down below there. Hit that button. We will be back tomorrow, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and enjoy the holiday tomorrow. Should be a good one. And also enjoy the games tomorrow. Take care. Go Canada, go. I'm Matt.